The Neo Geo, which was released in 1990, was known for a few things. It was expensive. Let me take that back. It still is expensive. 2. It brought the arcade experience home perfectly, something that was unheard of back then. And 3. This arcade system had some fun sport beat-em-ups and shooters in the beginning. So if you were a fan of these genres, this console was for you. For this video, let's take a look at the shoot-em-ups that found a home in this
24-bit system.
Summer 1975. A nightmare awaits me. I am being recalled to Non-Torn headquarters. Do I have to go back to the hell again?
NAM 75 was the first shoot-em-up to hit the system in 1990 and is the only one on the list here to not be a fighter jet or spaceship styled shooter. This was like playing Operation Wolf but from a third-person view. The action here is just relentless. The voiceovers are done really well for one of the first games on the console, showcasing what it could bring to the table other than good graphics.
Dr. R. Muckley, an ex-US Army scientist, has been kidnapped by possible Northside terrorists and taken to Nam's backwoods. So now we, a special force unit, have been organized to rescue him.
Even better is that it's co-op. The game is brutal though, it's not easy, even by arcade standards. I can't even beat the last boss, even using save states on an emulator. Yeah, you heard me right. And you only get a limited amount of times to try to beat him, and if you don't, the game is over. No chance to continue. Can you imagine, back then, plunking down just an insane amount of quarters, getting to the last boss, and then realizing that the game won't let you continue after a few tries and just gives you the game over screen? Somebody must have lost it back then. I have a feeling someone out there was probably arrested after this happened.
New operations have been won.
You will die!
Ghost Pilots was the first plane-style shoot-em-up to hit the Neo Geo in 1991. The 1940 series that Capcom had released in the arcades and the home consoles were very popular then. So it's no surprise that SNK played it safe here and released a 24-bit version of those titles. Even though the graphics are very well done here, there are a few issues with this game when compared to others of that genre. One is the size of the plane, which feels way too big when compared to the rest of the screen size. This makes dodging bullets almost impossible, which I guess is something that you want in an arcade so people can keep putting quarters in. On top of that problem, it's the speed of the plane. It is slow, very slow, and there's no way to upgrade the speed or change it whatsoever in the game. There's no power-ups for it. Which actually brings me to the power-ups, if that's what you want to call them, are just slight upgrades to your existing weapon. There are no other types of weapons to change to. So the game ends up just becoming a tedious shooter with little to no variety whatsoever. The bombs have a very small explosion radius and the cluster bomb tends to move away from where you launch it, making this one kinda like a toss in the air. Get it? A toss in the... I'm sorry. The levels are colorful when you can see the ground. Problem is that a few of the levels are just you in the air above the clouds. Okay, this level right here looks nice, I like it. Next level, clouds. Oh look, another level with more clouds. Gee, they look great. Anybody out there a fan of clouds? I would say Ghost Pilots is a good game if you're a huge shoot-em-up fan. Alpha Mission 2 is a continuation of the Alpha series, which was released back in '85 in arcades and '87 for the NES. Now, I rented this NES game back in the day a few times for the video rental store because they had no other ones and it was either that or X-Men. Yeah.
X-Men.
This sequel came out in 1991 and as expected, the graphical bump here is huge. The game, however, is a very mediocre take for an overhead shooter, just like its predecessor. At least the power-ups here are a little bit more interesting than those in Ghost Pilot. That game took power-ups back, I don't know, 10 years at least. Alpha Mission 2 is not my favorite shoot 'em up on this console, but I do like the huge bosses. Last Resort is actually one of the first really good shoot 'em ups for the system, but possibly one of the most difficult, which may turn off any newcomers rather quickly, and you know what, that's a shame. The game was released in 1992 and it has a very distinct look that reminds me a lot of the games that Nazca Corporation made. In case you are unaware, they made some awesome games like Air Duel, Gun Force 2, Undercover Cops, and In the Hunt. You can clearly see the graphical style they used in all these games right here, and I would not be surprised if some people that worked on Last Resort had ties to the Nazca group. Either that or it was heavily inspired by those games. You know, whichever of the two is correct, the game still has some great graphics and lots of neat little touches like the rain, the background animated enemies coming to the foreground, the people being ejected from the craft after being destroyed. I love stuff like that. If Ghost Pilots took the power-up idea back a few years, Last Resort rectified that a bit with an interesting feature of its own. The power-up here is the force option that not only attaches to your ship, but can be manipulated in different ways to maximize your offense or defense. You can position the option anywhere on your ship or have it follow you. You can also charge it and throw it to destroy enemies, but it leaves you vulnerable for a bit. There are also speed ups and speed down options to collect. Now you're gonna find while playing this game that there's plenty of slowdown here, but it actually helps out since the screen can get filled with enemy and bullets often, and slowing things down, that's actually to your advantage. The bosses here are large and very creative. Clearly this game and In the Hunt were a predecessor of things to come with over-the-top bosses in games like Metal Slug. This one right here is probably one of my favorite shooters on the Neo Geo. Right on the heel of Last Resort was Andro Dunos, developed by Visco and released in June of 1992. This co-op shooter had you playing as Yellow Cherry or Red Fox. Wait a second, what? Yellow Cherry or Red Fox? I'm sorry, am I playing a video game or am I watching a porn flick? I don't know why, but this game feels average when playing it. Maybe it's just me. The graphics are actually really nice. They're clean and very colorful, and the music feels a little bit one-dimensional and flat on some stages, but they still have a good beat to them. The weapon system here is what makes the game slightly interesting. You got a preset number of weapons that you can switch on the fly. 8 stages round out this title that for some reason, which I can't explain, it got a sequel in 2022. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong, but that just came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that. Meanwhile, here I am waiting for an F-Zero sequel to GX in 2024, so I don't know, go figure. Viewpoint was also released in 1992. Shoot 'em ups from an isometric point, those are rare, there's not a lot of them. The game was developed by ICOM, who had developed games like the legendary Axe, P-47 Thunderbolt on the PC engine, and Astyanax for the arcade and NES. So this was a different take for them as far as video games go. Personally, I had not seen a game like this since Saxon in 1982, so when I saw this one in the arcades, I just had to try it out. The music immediately jumped out at me. The second thing that really stood out was the difficulty. Now, I could barely make it to level 2 before I started to run short on quarters. This game is not only difficult due to the many enemies, but the controls. For some reason, I could never master the controls in isometric shooters, and they can be very tricky due to the angles that you must move to avoid shots and enemies. The game is short though, only 6 stages. I did not want to buy it for the Neo Geo when I had it, because it would just cost me about $300 and I would just probably get frustrated. So after I sold my Neo Geo in '96, which I regret to this day, I got the PlayStation port, which had improved graphics, totally unnecessary cutscenes, and a slightly remastered soundtrack with a password system. And I still couldn't pass level 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, hit!
Aero Fighters is a franchise that started in the arcades in 1992 and made its way to the Super NES, and some out there might remember this game as Sonic Wings. All 3 games were developed by Video Systems, but only the first 2 were published by SNK. This series is known for giving players the option to select different planes with different firepower and bombs. In 1994, Aero Fighters 2 was released for the Neo Geo system. Instead of 4 planes, now you got to select from 8 planes, each with a different pilot. And you got a really weird selection of characters here. A dolphin, a robot, a baby. Is that Stevie Nicks? Each plane has slightly different firepower and bombs, but other than that, their speed and agility, they don't really change. The levels, they're very short. In fact, they're actually a little bit too short. But the bosses here are big and colorful. The power-ups, however, they're basic. No different weapons are available in the game. This one is fast-paced and short, and therefore, it's fun. It's not bad. Try it out. You might be able to beat the whole game in only a few tries. When most people think of Neo Geo shooters, you think, Last Resort, you think of Viewpoint, and a couple of others, but Z-Blade is rarely talked about. This title was released in 1994 and was developed by NMK, who had also developed Thunder Dragon, P-47 Phantom Fighter, and Super Space Fortress Macross, which is basically Robotech for us here in the West. It is a side-scroller with 3 planes to choose from, as well as customizing your weapons. There is no weapon system here either. You just upgrade your weapon and missiles to shoot more, but you do have a bomb option, but no charge shot. In this game, you basically have to travel through the solar system as you fight an invading alien force heading towards Earth. Z-Blade is a pretty generic shooter that is really fast-paced and incredibly frantic, and the levels, they're not that long. The music here is not that bad either. Sadly though, this is the last game that NMK would develop. A moment of silence please, for NMK. If you are like me and you are a huge R-Type fan, then Pulsar filled that itch on the Neo Geo. This game was the first on the system to incorporate 3D pre-rendered graphics and was developed by ICOM. The difficulty here is very high, and the game rewards you for memorization and a tactical approach. Even though the game incorporates many things seen in R-Type, they omitted one of the most important things of all, the ability to relocate the front R9-like unit to the back, or being able to launch it as a weapon. This game also lets you select any of the first 4 stages of the game, which was a big deal back in the day since this option alone makes you want to try one more time to see what you missed. Plus, after completing stage 4, you automatically go to stage 5, meaning you don't have to start from level 1 on a future playdate. The levels are very detailed and the bosses are huge and animated very well. If you can get past the fact that this is a game very similar to R-Type with a high difficulty, then you will enjoy this one. Aero Fighter returns to the Neo Geo after a very long hiatus of just 1 year. Now we got 10 planes to choose from with 2 secret characters, and can I just add something that I should have done earlier in this video? Why? Oh, just why do developers create games with many characters to select from and put a freaking timer on the selection screen? Why? Can we stop that please? Either no timer at all, or at least give us, I don't know, 2 minutes max? Is that so bad? Nothing is worse than going through all the characters, and when you do finally make a choice and are moving the cursor back to the character that you want, the timer ends and you wind up using a character that you do not like or care for. Originally, it was not released in the US for the AES, only for the MPS and the Neo Geo CD. The game has 18 levels, some of which repeat, but the game now has a branching system that you see right here. That helps replay value a little bit here, even though every plane controls the same, and the only thing that's different between them is the special bomb option. But the most important thing in this game, and I cannot highlight this enough, is that Spanky returns. You know what? I'm sold. Now, here's a strange title, and I say strange because I wasn't sure what to expect from it when I first tried it out. The game is what some call a cute 'em up. A shoot 'em up that goes for the cute angle with extremely, and I'm talking extremely vibrant colors. There's a huge lineup of games that fall under this genre. This title was developed by ADK in 1996, and it would also be their last. A moment of silence, please, for ADK. If you can get past the cute angle and those really annoying voices, this game is a well-made competitive shoot 'em up, and these are actually rare. I won't get into the specifics of the game as far as the gameplay mechanics go, but in short, let me say that this game is actually quite fun in short spurts. You got a power shot and bombs to help you clear the enemies on your side, and you can also create combos that can be used to send back enemies to your opponent. You can even summon a boss character if you are successful in daisy chaining combos. This one was actually a surprise. Blazing Star is the spin-off sequel to Polestar and was developed by Yumikobo, which was basically Icom, but when they separated from Sammy, the corporation, they changed their name and were then funded by SNK when they made this game. Critics were harsh on Polestar due to the difficulty, which I don't blame them, but I feel it is similar to R-Type since it requires more of a memorization approach. This title tries to remedy all of the shortcomings of Polestar by introducing more ships, a slightly more forgiving difficulty, and better designed stages. Each ship has a different weapon and special power shots, but one of the most important things here is that when you continue, you can go ahead and select another ship to start playing with. This right here should be a standard feature on any shoot 'em up that has multiple ships. The voiceover every time you pick up anything in the game will quickly get on your nerves though. Oh my god, the word bonus being shouted over 40 times per level tends to stir up angering issues in you as you play the game. Yes, females voiceover, I do know that's a bonus because you have told me this like 700 times already, but thank you for reminding me for the 701st time. The graphics are very detailed and the levels and backgrounds look amazing, with some having pre-rendered 3D-like graphics to give them a feeling of more depth than the traditional parallax scrolling, which by itself looks great. Not only that, but the graphics are very colorful and really showcase what the Neo Geo could do. Once you get to the bosses, oh, that is where the game really takes it up a notch. This game and Metal Slug have some really huge and imaginative bosses, and they are no pushovers. This is one of the better shooters to come out of the mid-1990s and looks as good today as it did 26 years ago. Oh god, I feel old now. Prehistoric Isle was originally released in 1999 only in the arcades, so it was no surprise that it got a sequel on the Neo Geo. The only surprising part is that it only took them, 10 years? Part 1 was developed by SNK, but the sequel was done by the teams from Saurus and Yume Kobo, who had done Blazing Star. Even more surprising, the sequel was pushed by Masanori Kuwasashi, who had worked as director for King of Fighters 94 and 95, and Samurai Shodown designer Yasushi Arachi. So a shoot-'em-up sequel was made possible by two veterans from the fighting genre. Boy, talk about unexpected. The title has 6 levels of dinosaur-infested fun. You choose from 2 pilots with 2 different copters, each with unique weapons as you shoot down waves of dinos and rescue humans caught in the chaos of it all. I love how the little people here just hang on for dear life. If you do collect survivors, you can drop them off to the next emergency helicopter for bonus points as well as upgrades to your weapons. The levels are not that long, and the graphics are very well done, but have that, claymation feel to them that I'm not really a big fan of, but I do respect the amount of work that went into them. SNK needs to bring back this series. If Angel Dunos of all games can get a sequel, then pretty much anything can get a sequel, except F-Zero. When I had an NES, 1943 was one of my favorite shooters. It was leagues above the atrocious 1942, which, according to me, at least in my opinion, has got to be one of the dullest shooters I have ever played. How did such a game get a sequel? Can you imagine a bad video game getting a sequel? You know what? I stand corrected. Strikers 1945 Plus is part of the 1945 series, which is actually totally separate from the 1940X series from Capcom. You got 6 planes to choose from. There's that damn timer again. Why do you people do this? The gameplay here is well placed, but it's not too frantic and it's not slow either. So from that standpoint, the gameplay is actually good. It's fun. The levels are short and full of action non-stop. However, I did have a few gripes here. First, the borders that you see here on each side. I don't like borders in shooters. I feel that the view on such games need to be full screen to see enemy waves and give you more room to maneuver. Second is the graphics. While the animation and the bosses are nice to look at, the stages, they all have that washed grainy brown color palette look to them. Although I think that's just me being spoiled since I do love Raiden 2, which I immediately snatched up when I bought my PlayStation back in '96. And I still play it from time to time. I have yet to beat that game. Anyway, I digress. 1945 Plus is a fun game to play, don't get me wrong. It's very well balanced, and it has some pretty good music to go along with all the action. Now, I wasn't sure if I should include Captain Tomade? I don't know how to pronounce it. It plays like a shooter, sort of. You don't really shoot, but instead you use your fists as weapons. Now, I just wanted to give it a mention here before I ended the video. This is another one that falls under the cute-em-up genre. If you ever have the urge to play a game where a tomato is mutated to fly through the skies and uses gloved fists to repel an alien armada made up of foods and other silly objects, your prayers have been answered. You can't go wrong here. And with that said, this ends the list of Neo Geo shoot-em-ups. Now you might think to yourself, that's not a lot of shooters for a console. You have to keep in mind that the entire Neo Geo library consists of only around 150 games or so, with around maybe 118 of them being released for the AES, which is the home console side. Considering that, 80 of those titles are freaking King of Fighter games, and you are left with a limited number of games that can accommodate other genres. The Neo Geo was well ahead of its time in terms of hardware capabilities, but the game lineup was always something that left many wondering, what if? I always thought that the Neo Geo could have done a great ride-and type game, or brought into the mix shoot 'em ups with more deeper gameplay and more options as far as weapons are concerned, like Blazing Star, which I still think holds its own fairly well even today. If I was to rank my top 3 shooters for the system, I would have them as number 1, Blazing Star, great game overall. 2, Prehistoric Isle 2, just a fun shooter. It's so silly with the dinosaurs and everything, but I do love the gameplay. And Last Resort, very high difficulty, but a very well thought out game as far as the weapon system is concerned. I give major props to Polestar for leaving gamers with the ability to choose from the first 4 stages though, and that alone gives that title a lot more replayability. The Neo Geo is not a system known for its shooters, granted, but the few that it has, they are fun to play, regardless of which title that you go with. Now, what is your favorite shoot 'em up for the Neo Geo? Which one do you have the fondest memories of playing in the arcades, or maybe at home if you were lucky to have one? Share with us all and see you on my next video. Until then, keep watching and keep gaming.
Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ những video hấp dẫn.